Sunita, Reddy, and Shri Anil Kumar Sinha, who have not only chronicled but actively shaped the landscape of disaster management in India. This volume, the fruit of deep reflection and decades of field engagement, arrives at a moment when the frequency, complexity, and scale of disasters, both natural and human induced, have amplified the urgency for resilient governance system and scholarly foresight. This book is more than a compendium of expert observations. It's a testament to lived experience, a chronicle of institutional memory, and a guide for shaping robust disaster governance in India and beyond. It offers a layered understanding of how institutions, individuals, and communities engage in calamities, natural and man made, through the lenses of policy, practice, and lived experiences. The volume of this the value of this book lies not only in the documentation of disaster events, but in its deliberate effort to reach the worlds of policy, academia, and on ground action. Its contributors span disciplines, institutions, and geographies, collectively offering an interdisciplinary lens that is critical in a field where lives are at stake and governance cannot afford to be fragmented. Our speakers today, ranging from scholars of aesthetics to senior administrators in border management, urban planning experts to pioneering engineers, national award winning practitioners to globally respected academics, remind us that disaster planning is not confined to manuals and protocols. It is inherently about people, how they respond, how they adapt, and how they rebuild. It's about governance that is inclusive, anticipatory, and resilient. And it's also about education, preparing the next generation of researchers, planners, and responders with the knowledge and ethical compass needed to navigate crisis. As we delve into the pages of the work and the voices behind them, let's remember every disaster is both a rapture and a revelation. It reveals our vulnerabilities, but also our capacity, our ingenuity, and our empathy and collective strength to address those. This book and today's discussion remind us that governance must evolve and only with better tools and technologies, but with wisdom, compassion, and conviction, and a deep sense of responsibility to the most vulnerable within us. We're especially privileged today to be joined by the editors themselves, Dr. Sunita Reddy, an accomplished scholar in medical anthropology and public health, and Shri Anil Kumar Sinha, a pioneering architect of disaster management systems in the country. Together, they have curated a volume that not only informs but inspires. Allow me to extend our heartfelt gratitude to each of the contributors whose insights and experiences illuminate this important work. We warmly welcome Professor Dhananjay Singh, Member Secretary, ICSSR, whose erudition in Indian poetics and cultural performance lends a unique interdisciplinary reflection on disaster narratives and human resilience. Welcome, Professor Singh, to this. Shri A.K. Mangotra, whose years of service in India's administrative machinery, particularly in border management and national security, provide critical perspective on state preparedness and policy implementation. Welcome, Dr. Mangotra. Dr. Chandrani Bandhapayani Yogi, whose scholarship on urban planning and resilience offers a crucial interface between disaster risk reduction and special policy frameworks. Welcome, Dr. Yogi. And joining us virtually, Professor Jan Davis, an internationally recognized authority in disaster risk reduction and recovery, whose academic and global perspectives help contextualize India's experience with a broader comparative framework. Our gratitude also extends to the distinguished contributors who have offered their reflections through the this book, Dr. R.K. Bandari, whose decades of pioneering research on landslides and disaster education remind us of the indispensable role of science and technology in risk mitigation. Welcome, Dr. Bandari. Shri K.M. Singh, whose leadership in establishing and shaping the National Disaster Response Force and NDRF has set a global benchmark in institutional capacity building. Welcome, Professor Singh. And Professor Vinod K. Sharma, whose contributions to policy capacity building and international cooperation in disaster science continue to shape national and regional strategies for emergency preparedness. Welcome, Professor Sharma. Each of these contributors, through their chapters, essays, and reflections, has offered us not only knowledge, but also conviction, compassion, and a call to action. Their voices underscore a central truth of disaster governance that resilience is not a solitary enterprise, but a collaborative, inclusive, and deeply human endeavor. Once again, I welcome you all and thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate a work that is as academically rigorous as it is socially vital. With that, let's begin the proceedings by inviting our moderator, Dr. Anshu Sharma, a leading expert in disaster resilience and urban planning, to guide us through the discussions ahead. Welcome, Anshuji, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Rusha, for the warm welcome to all of us and for continuing to provide this space where just by being here, you get the feel and the thoughts that drive a lot of processes in our work to higher levels, and it's a privilege being here and your introductions too. And while this is a formal launch, but this is almost a very close group. This is a group that has known each other for about 3 decades. And in that spirit, I would say it's more of a evening where we are amongst friends to talk about issues that we strongly believe in, and we would try to take these to as far levels as we can. Usha ji, you've been yourself a force that we have seen in your previous role also from IIPA, where the National Center and then the National Institute took off. So thank you again. It's been a great, just a run up to this, and preparing for this has been very exciting. We don't have so many opportunities nowadays as we used to in the past, in the pre-COVID and pre-Zoom and Teams days, to engage in this manner. So it's a very valuable evening. Before we start our proceedings, there's a moment that we would want to take to remember a very senior mentor, almost a mentor to every one of us, Shri P.P. Srivastava, an IS officer of repute, 1960 batch, and we've all. I came much later on the scenes. I have seen him in action in the Northeast with the Northeast Council. So much work that he did to drive that agenda, and even at a very senior age, he was appearing in conferences, meetings. The last time I saw him was in Sikkim. He's no longer with us. He's not only a guide and mentor to us, but he's a contributor to the volume that is being released today. So may I request for a minute of silence? We remember Shri P.P. Srivastava and the guidances he provided us. May I request you to please take your seats? And with the blessings of the elders that we have just invoked, let's dive into the evening. Uh, any amount of time would be too short with the kind of people, dignitaries, and speakers we have today. We'll try to make the best use of these. This about an hour and a half that we intend spending here. Usha ji has already introduced our panelists and speakers for the evening. We will take a couple of minutes just to felicitate everyone on the dais here. We have some young colleagues who are presenting these beautiful plants that you see there. May I invite our volunteers to please come to the well, and let's welcome Professor Dhananjay Singh, uh, Secretary ICSSR, to the plant. Thank you, sir. May we also welcome Dr. R.K. Bhandari, who's also our panelist, contributing author this evening. May we now welcome Shri K.M. Singh. We have all known Singh sir for the guidance he has given us and the paths he opened up in his role in the NDMA. And we welcome Professor V.K. Sharma. Professor Sharma has been a binding force, getting all of us together in many, many ways, hosting us at the National Center for Disaster Management. May we now please get a plant to welcome Shri A.K. Mangotra. Mangotra sir is our chief guest this evening and will be guiding us through this. And finally, have a plan to welcome Professor Chandrani, School of Planning and Architecture, an eminent figure in specifically the area of urban disaster management. Thank you. Thank you so much. And with that, we will get this session rolling. We would like to start with a message we have for us from Professor Ian Davis. Those of us who work in this sector would know him well. He's known as the first professor of disaster management globally. He set up the first master's degree course on disaster management in Cranfield University. I was still in college at that time, and I used to dream of going and being there and just seeing the work he does. And thanks to Professor Sharma and Sinha Saab, we had the opportunity to have him in India a number of times, helping us set up a number of great things that happened, starting from one of the early earthquake recovery programs that happened in Maharashtra after the Latur earthquake. Professor Ian Davis is also currently active. He's a visiting professor at the universities of Kyoto, London, Oxford Brookes, and RMIT in Europe. He sends his best wishes and this short message of about 7-8 minutes. So maybe play the message now of Professor Ian Davis. While his message comes up, I can also tell you that he's best known for his work on shelter after disaster. There's a book that he...
Great pleasure to be present on the screen of your important gathering here in Delhi. And I just want to wish this meeting every success. Some years ago, I found out that this book was going to be written present on the screen of your important gathering here in Delhi. And I just want to wish this meeting every success. Some years ago, I found out that this book was going to be written by Anil and Sunita, bringing together Anil's vast experience of disaster risk and recovery, and Sunita's extensive experience and writing many books and so on. And it seemed to be a winning combination and something which is to be celebrated. And they were kind enough to ask me to write the foreword for it, which I did with great pleasure. It was a big honor to participate in this project. My background is that I'm an architect, or was an architect, and I have spent a big chunk of my career since I was in my early 30s working in disaster matters. In 1977, I first went to India after the Andhra cyclone, the cyclone which caused such devastation in the Guntur district of Andhra, and I've been going repeatedly to India over the years, to various places and watching this spectacular progress. I mean, you are really to be congratulated. The people who are in this room in the International Centre today are many of the people I know who have been active in this transformation of India, in Indian experience of disaster management and recovery planning. I've observed that. And my last visit to India was 2 years ago when I went to a conference in Dehradun, which was very exciting. And as I heard the different reports from government officials, academics, and so on, it was just staggering to see the scale of the change and the way India was trailblazing patterns which other countries were now following. And you were having a decisive impact globally. So that's been extraordinary. More recently, I've been working as an adjunct professor to Amrita University down in Kerala and helping with their PhD program and giving them advice and so on. And again, they've been doing remarkable work in developing research and consultancies and advice on disaster risk. My experience with Anil has been one of the joys of my life, to be honest. I can't remember when we first met, but there have been various conferences in Delhi, in different parts. We met in Bihar, and we spent a very, very happy time together in Japan in 2006 when Anil was working with the International Recovery Program, and we just explored many ideas together, and we thought about disaster risk. And as I listened to Anil talking to me in various places over many meals and many walks and conversations, I realized that he had this deep experience of disaster risk within a framework of development. It was all actually within this developmental framework, and it just needed to be got out and about. And like many, many public officials, he didn't have the time to write. Very, very busy doing administration and attending meetings and so on and so forth. So when I heard he had put pen to paper with Sunita on this very exciting volume, that was something, a great cause for celebration. I think it's quite crucial that people who are in the driving seat of disaster risk are given the opportunity to reflect on their experiences, good experiences, bad experiences. It's all grist for the mill, as we say in England, and it's all something which we need to learn from. And I just, when I look through the text of this book, and many of the contributors are in the room where I'm speaking now, I just want to congratulate you all because you've put great ideas together, and the reflections you have are pertinent and very, very important. So I just want to commend this book to everybody who has a chance of getting hold of it, whether it's online or whether it's hard copy. It doesn't matter. The lessons are crucial. And the main focus of it, I think, is that public officials, academics, students, we all need to reflect on what we're doing and what we're observing. And there's no substitute for careful, measured observation of field experience. As we look at things, we see things, and everybody sees it slightly differently. I see it as an architect looking at building structures and thinking about bricks and mortar or thatch or timber and the way they're put together. Other people see it from a public health point of view. Some see it from an administrative point of view or from a logistical point of view. Wherever they come from, what their background is, what their job title is. And so we not only need to reflect on the situation, we need to use our base discipline, what we were trained to do originally, and to use that experience. And what Anil does is bring all his IAS experience to bear on this, and having run disasters at different levels in the government, working closely with NGOs, working closely with the government departments, and later with UN departments and UN agency people, and grassroots people working at the community level right across the spectrum. And the same applies to Sunita's rich experience. All that is wonderful stuff to read. And so full marks for getting this book out and about. And I just want to commend it to everybody and hope that it gets carefully read and applied. So thank you very much for this priceless opportunity of commending the book to you and wishing it well and wishing you all well in the vital work that you're undertaking in India. I'm now far too old for this business. I'm in my 89th year, so I'm getting on very old. But I have the great privilege in a couple of weeks' time of going to Geneva to take part in a conference of the World Resilient Recovery event, which happens before the global platform. And so I might be able to see some of you there. I hope so. I'm going to be there for one of their events and will be reflecting on the day's discussions. So it's always enjoyable to meet people and be stimulated by them and be encouraged, because we need all the encouragement we can get in this field. Thank you again, and very, very good wishes. And thank you, Anil, and thank you, Sunita, for doing such an important service to the community generally, and in particular, a service to the disaster victims, those who are vulnerable, those who need help, those who have no voice. And you've given them a voice, and you've expressed their needs through this book. And I just want to thank you very much, most sincerely, for your efforts. Thank you and good wishes.
Lessons on disaster management. Sir, it's great we've had him as the opening speaker. I think that sets the stage for us to expect many more volumes from Dr. Sunita and yourself. But I'm also reminded, so Ian has been a teacher for most of us who work in this sector. In my many years ago, in my PhD final jury, he was on the panel, and he's an architect, and I come from an architecture and planning background. And the one lesson he's reiterated time and again is that shelter is not about building an infrastructure, shelter is about families. And we used to work on school safety, and he always said school safety is not about schools, it's about children. So the whole context of how people are at the center of a lot of the planning we do brings me to our next panelist, Professor Dhananjay Singh, who's currently member secretary of the Indian Council of Social Science Research. So disaster management is so integrally and at its core a social science subject, while we talk a lot about building the infrastructure and so many logistical things around it. We would love to hear from you, your views.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Professor Sunita Reddy and Anil Kumar Sinha ji. And Professor Akim, Shri Akim Mangotra, and I beg your pardon, everybody distinguished here with me, all in the audience, and Professor Vaishnav Narang, my teacher, some of my friends from JNU, and Professor, my dear friend from Kolkata, and everybody. So I'm really privileged to be here, and thank you so much for making this possible. I'm not an expert on disaster management by any stretch of imagination, but of course it's a very important subject for social science research, and I represent ICSSR here. But I also see that this is a truly multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary engagement, and there cannot be any human being who has not been affected by disaster or has seen disaster closely, especially in a country like India and elsewhere as well, sometime in life, obviously. And there are different ways in which we respond to disaster. Obviously, natural disaster. I grew up in the Northeast. I grew up in Arunachal Pradesh, and I'm from Bihar. So disaster, of course, is ubiquitous, is everywhere. So disaster on the coast, disaster on the plains, floods, of course, cyclones, glacier bursts. Disaster is has a strong impact on nation's economy. Uh, it affects communities. It displaces people and societies and communities, and therefore we need to have a national response. We need to also have a global response, cross national, transnational response, like the one, of course, coordination for disaster resilience infrastructure that the Honorable Prime Minister announced in 2019 with 39 countries. So I'm really glad and I'm happy and I congratulate both the editors of the volume, and I have an opportunity to kind of quickly go through it, and I love to take some time to read the book. It's a very important book. Um, for Indian Council of Social Science Research, this is a priority area. I had a meeting with the officers at the NDMA some 4 or 5 months back, and where we discussed about how we can collaborate on some of the initiatives that I want to start at ICSR. Ever since I've joined, we've already kind of sort of associated, we are associated with some certain studies, of course, that fall within disaster management or disaster resilience. In particular, if I can name, of course, disaster always mostly affects the vulnerable communities, of course. So we have a study on uh, the flood affected Dalit community in the Behraj. There's one study on that we are currently, of course, monitoring at ICSSR. The other, of course, on glacier burst floods in the Sikkim, of course, and disaster management strategies. So what I'm trying to say, this is important for us, and therefore it's important for the country when we look at becoming a developed nation by 2047. There's a quest for it, and therefore we need to have very resilient and very clear policy making. Of course, that depends a lot on human experiences, because human is a center for any activity, of course, any activity that affects societies and communities in any way. And experiences are important. So I'm really glad that we have a book that has come out based on the experiences of the researchers. We also feel that in all the research that we support at ICSSR, and for the last 2 years, if you have been following ICSSR, of course, we've been supporting research on priority areas roughly within the SDGs, of course, the Sustainable Development Goals. And we believe that hierarchical difference or between the a researcher who comes out of a university is associated with a research institute and a member of the community is irrelevant, because obviously policies, especially in the context of disaster, whether when you're talking of, for instance, the crisis in Uttarakhand, of course, is very prone to disaster every monsoon. Uh, the voice of the community, the ideas of the community as such, as to what should be the policy, what modification that the stakeholders should make is extremely important. Therefore, we believe that members of the community should be active part of the research team. That's what we have introduced at ICSSR recently. I would also like to say here that the most recent, of course, call for projects as ICS are for longitudinal studies. In fact, last year we started for the first time in the history of ICSSR longitudinal studies in social and human sciences, of course, where we want our researchers to study, to observe the phenomena and the data and revisit the data and revisit the respondents for a longer period of time, 5 years, let's say, so that we have a more solid and more reliable policy inputs. The research initiative that we recently announced is for longitudinal studies and disaster resilience, of course, disaster risk reduction, of course, disaster management as such, from diverse perspective, from diverse context, is an important theme for these longitudinal studies that you invited. We also termed this as inclusive disaster management. Of course, for instance, one of the sub themes of the call is disability and disaster resilience. in short, what I would like to say, of course, I have a limited time, is this that this is important. Uh, it calls for interdisciplinary approaches. It calls for diversity of the research team coming from different fields with different expertise. And it calls for people with real lived experiences to come together and to suggest or to formulate, of course, a policy based again on experiences, both experiences which are both technical experiences, academic experiences, as well as experiences, as well as ideas and insights that come from lived experience to give to formulate policies that we can then give it to the government, of course, to have a more robust disaster management policy for the country. With that, I would reiterate this fact that I'm really grateful and very happy that I have had this opportunity to be here at this moment, and this launch of the release of this book, sorry, the discussion of this book. I beg your pardon. And I hope that the book becomes a very important reference point. That there's another shift, of course, in social sciences and human sciences. Of course, it all is already always been. Is this that research which is in fact reproduced in a narrative form, which of course, which has a more wider dissemination. It's for common readership as well. I think in that context also this book is extremely important. We also need to take into account how technology, and where we're talking of AI, obviously, where human experience and specific human experience or specific communities, if you have a disaster policy, for instance, whether it's of risk reduction, whether it's preventive or reactive, you cannot have a general policy without taking into account a specific context of disaster crisis, for instance. So it's extremely important, even as AI is going to have a huge impact. It's already has had a huge impact, even as we are talking now. But the value of individual experiences, which may not have become a general data as such, is a job, is a responsibility of the social scientists, of course, to kind of record that, document that, documentation of experiences. So thank you so much, and I wish the book all the best, and I'm sure that this becomes an important reference book. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Singh. You touched upon so many very relevant topics, kind of setting goals for us on interdisciplinarity, on inclusion, on diversity in the teams. But you also spoke about longitudinal research, 5 years or more. And I was reminded recently, another common friend for a lot of people in this room, Professor Ian Davis's first student who came and worked here, David Sanderson, who's now a professor at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, was recently telling me. So they are doing a project, a research project called How We Survive. It is on survival capacities of local communities, which is a 40-year funded research. Started in the year 2022, will run till 2062. The money is with the university, and even the research head knows that he will not be here when the research concludes. But that's how they are investing, that's how, and perhaps because there are so many research leaders and guides in this room, I think, thank you for pointing that out, sir. Our longitudinal perspective really needs to get strengthened. And we understand you may have to leave early. You had an engagement, but thank you so much for sparing this time and sharing your thoughts. And now we move to the two people to whom we owe our thanks for having us here this evening, Dr. Sunita Reddy and Shri Anil Sinha. Sunita ji, we've all felt inspired looking at the book. So much to learn, but do also tell us about the book on, what inspired you to do it? How did you conceive it? How did you structure it? And how do you, being in the university, see it going ahead, filling the research and learning gaps in the sector?
So good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to all our guests, students, panelists, my colleagues, and our chief guest, Dr. Dhananjay Singh ji. We are very happy and glad to celebrate our book with all of you. this book wouldn't have been possible without very eminent experts who are sitting with us, and some of them who couldn't join us, for their valuable contribution in the book as chapters. If you go through the content list, you'll understand the wealth of knowledge which they have, and they have poured it on the paper. This book has a very interesting journey. In fact, me and Anil sir, when we met in 2017, the idea of the book came. We briefly discussed about it. We thought we should document our experts, senior most colleagues who have been serving in different institutions, who are pioneers in building these institutions for last 20, 30 years. And then we forgot for almost a year, and then suddenly we thought we should work on it, and we started planning again. And we were trying to find some resources to go and interview all senior colleagues. This was way back in 2019. And then COVID happened, and all of us turned digital, and all of us started connecting on Zoom. And after some time, we realized, why not connect on Zoom? And especially when all of us were locked down in our houses, we were looking for something more creative and productive. And that's where we again got in touch with our senior colleagues. We made a list of senior most people, and then contacted them. They were all very willing to be part of the book. And we scheduled hour-long or 2 hours long, sometimes not one, more interviews with them on Zoom. We had very nice time, three of us, like two of us and the expert, sitting and having an interview kind of experience on Zoom, and then we recorded it, and then we transcribed it, and then we edited it, and finally we put it on the manuscript together, and we could share it with the Cambridge Scholars Publishing House, UK. We started planning this when, in fact, our first expert was Professor A.S. Arya, who's eminent expert in building codes and earthquake-resistant structures. Unfortunately, we lost him before interviewing him. Fortunately, we could have pearls of wisdom from P.P. Srivastava ji and his initiatives and experiences from Northeast before we lost him. After the book was released, we could have a word with him and we could congratulate him also. And that's how most of our panelists could contribute to this volume. So we consider this book as one of the basic fundamental book for disaster professionals, as it captures the changing contours of disaster management in India, covering the events, institutional buildings in the past 4 decades, from the experts, pioneers, and leaders in disaster management, and who have spent lifetime in building these institutions. They narrated their personal journeys into disasters, their aspirations, goals, challenges they faced in building the institutions, and the governance issues they faced. And we are very fortunate to have wonderful foreword written by Professor Ian Davis, whom you heard just now. Very encouraging words and blessings. Thank you so much, Professor Ian Davis. The book actually consists of 19 chapters divided into 4 sections. The introduction chapter gives a brief history of global policy and frameworks and DM policy and act and plans in India. It elaborates on institutional structures, functions, and growth, and learning from major disasters in the country. With each major disaster, the nation became more resilient and developed instruments and institutions towards DRR, be it Bhopal gas accident, Bhuj earthquake, tsunami, and urban floods. We as nations is progressing towards making institutional frameworks, laws, policies, and disaster management plans at national, state, and down up to the district level. Being the largest population in the world and limited resources, we still face lots of challenges. The section 1 covers relief to resilience, building a culture of prevention, having 5 chapters by R.K. Bandari ji, Anil Sinha ji, V.K. Sharma ji, and Pradeep Sahani ji, and myself. As all speakers are here, some of them are going to talk about their chapters. I would like to share the chapter which I penned down on disaster management, education, research, publications, pedagogy in India from social science perspective. And as Dhananjay just said, that it's a very multidisciplinary research, and DM disaster itself is a very multidisciplinary field where we need to really engage into lived experiences of people and tracing the rehabilitation process longitudinally. And that's where my journey into disaster management started in 2005 when I started working on tsunami. From 2005 to 10, I captured the trials, tribulations, challenges faced by not just the administration on one hand, but the people who lost lives and the survivors. So that was my first initiative into disaster management. And 2008, in fact, with NIDM, Professor Dhar Chakravarti, we organized an international conference on disaster aid post tsunami, and again another volume, the aid and post disaster tsunami, came into picture, which was again published by Springer Nature. And my first book was basically on clash of waves, where waves are not just waves of tsunami, but you all know, we all witnessed with tsunami, there were waves of emotions and waves of humanitarian aid which came in and how it was expended in across the countries. There were some unintended consequences, though there were intentions were very good, but when you look at in a in-depth understanding the research which many scholars from abroad also did in Sri Lanka, Tamil Nadu, Thailand, and Andaman Nicobar Island, we could see that the unintended consequences were very serious on the social fabric of people. That's where we started working on disasters and being part of some of the deliberations across, working with NDMA and IDM colleagues here. The idea about having multidisciplinary teaching and research in India, we could see that we still lag far behind, though we have many centers which are teaching disaster management and having a disciplinary in-depth understanding. But when we look into applied aspect and action-based research, especially from the point of view of people, we really need to come together as a multidisciplinary team to work for them. And that's where I think it's very important to have holistic, multi, and even transdisciplinary research. We really do not have very good journals on disaster management in India. In fact, the chapter which I wrote talks about the research and publications, and we could see that internationally there are lots of journals from what you call high impact factor ranging from 1 to 5. There is a journal called Nature Climate Change with an impact factor of 30 in 2023. And we are far behind. We really need to come together and not just the academia. I feel it's important to bring together professionals from across sectors to come together and put down a journal which has a value in terms of disseminating the research which we all do. Section 2, of course, covers 5 very important chapters by General Vij, General Bharadwaj of NDMA, Professor Santosh Kumar in IDM, Professor Rakesh Dubeji on DMI, and KM Singh sir, who's with us on NDRF. And lots of times and tribulations making these institutions which they built brick by brick and the challenges faced by them, which is very interesting to hear from them. Section 3, again, 4 chapters by KJ Rameshji from IMD, Colonel Professor Sanjay Srivastavaji on lightning campaign. We are happy to have him here. And I'm the witness to see the seeds sown, now a national program on the lightning, which grew leaps and bounds in the last 7-8 years, I suppose. The technological innovations which were invented and discovered as we faced each unique disaster. And Professor P.P. Srivastavaji's and Shri Bhaskar Barua sir's fascinating Northeast region and people-centric approaches in disaster management. And the last section 4, where book discusses the capacity building, humanitarian response, and international cooperation. Shri Loy Rigo from ADPC and the role of ADPC in DM policy and frameworks. Amod Mani Dikshitji from Nepal's journey in DRR and learning from India, and Shri Padmanabhanji from UNDP and Vikrant Mahajanji on his journey on Sphere India. So these are the chapters which are really talking to each other and also providing a whole framework in the last 3-4 decades how these institutions have been built up and what were the major contributions, what were the challenges they faced, especially in the governance issues. So it's a very, very important reading. However, we were not very happy with the book, the pricing, because it's international publishings. They generally put 8,000-10,000 on the cost of the book. And after 50% discount and having a paperback, Still, it's around 3,000 rupees, which actually makes it very difficult for us, even the libraries, to buy when we are short of funding. So we are hoping that we'll soon bring Indian edition with low price, and would like to share it with more people across the country, with DM scholars and also libraries. Till then, we'll be happy. And this is available online also. We'll be sharing the link with all of you. So I look forward to hearing all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunita ji. You make it sound very easy. Zoom calls हुए or transcripts हुए, but we all completely understand this must have been so much hard work putting all of this together. And you very rightly spoke about applied knowledge. You know, how do you take it from knowledge to practice? We'll move to Shri Anil Sinha, sir, on applied knowledge. There's no one better than you to speak. You've managed disasters like the Gujarat earthquake from literally under a tree the day it struck. And from there, you've set up systems, global systems from the IRP in Japan, Bihar, and so many other things. And you've also constantly been writing. This book is not the only piece, but I think if we put all the volumes of No Disasters together, there would be a few volumes of books that will be there. So you've really seen, I know you've written about the changing contours. You've seen those contours change and you've been part of that change. So what would be your words that all of us can carry, and how would you like us to use the book, and how would you like its message to go out, sir?
Thank you, Anshu, and thanks to everyone for coming this evening. Namaste and good evening to everyone. Thanks to Ian Davis for such a wonderful, inspiring message at his age, 89th year, approaching 90. Yet he is full of all these experiences which he recalls, and then even now he's so very active, going to world conferences and all that, you say. My family, thanks to my family, because a book is a major, major project. Takes a huge bit of your life, practically, because a major book, this has been my first such experience. It takes a whole lot of time, the kind of research and everything which goes into it. And there are layers and layers and layers of work before it comes to a stage when the manuscript is ready. Then it goes to the publisher, then you get it, then you again go through it, etc., etc. So I think the family also has to go through all that, First of all, let me talk to your family. Have you ever seen, those who have been in the world of disasters, another book on disaster? Because normally, if you recall the covers of the books on disasters, they would be dull. They'll be very gloomy. They'll be dirty. They'll be dark, kind of. But here is one book where the cover is very, very pleasant. And the credit goes to my niece, my elder brother's daughter, Swati Sinha. I hope she is there on the YouTube. And she's a painter by profession, and she's doing very well at exhibitions, etc. So when we were thinking, we could think of all India level inviting artists and all that, but then suddenly it struck to me, why not at home itself? Similarly, when I was in Bihar and heading the Bihar Disaster Management Authority, we had to design the logo. Then again, the first option was to go for global or India, all India kind of competition. But then, as we went through the discussion, I realized, there is a Patna School of Art, you see, just a couple of kilometers from my office. So I went over, met the director, talked to him, very encouraging response. And then we ended up through a process, seminar, etc. But then having a competition where we gave prizes, I think 10, 15 years back, 25,000 rupees or more than that. About 35 students, including faculty members, they also participated in that. And we had eminent artists in judging. And finally, when it went to the chief minister, who also happens to be yeah, statutorily, because these STMAs are statutory bodies created under the law. Chief Minister is the chairman. So it went up to him, he had to approve. And I was very happy that Mr. Nitish Kumar applied his mind, took time, applied his mind, gave some very specific suggestions. I don't have the logo out here, but in a moment you can see it on the net. Well, that is about the support of the family and, of course, friends. Working with Sunita was very, very unlikely kind of a collaboration. There was no planning. I think stars were there. We just met somewhere. We talked about it. We thought there is a possibility. As she mentioned, for about a year we forgot about it. You see, we just didn't remember that we had thought about. And then suddenly we realized, got in touch again, but the process wasn't moving ahead. But then, thanks to COVID, I mean, we don't normally thank COVID because everyone we had terrible time. And I suppose in every family there were losses. But then every disaster also offers you opportunities. You know, that's one lesson which we have learned who have been working. Every disaster invariably leaves its own signatures and also gives some opportunities. You can use it for positive purposes. And that is what happened. Suddenly we realized that wherever we were stuck in going down to the people, the eminent, we had shortlisted more than 2 dozen key people who had been the steering whole story of disaster management in India in the last 2 3 years, and that is how the whole thing came about. Now, somehow or the other, I found that disaster management has been intertwined with my career, right from the probationary days when Patna was flooded to my first posting in a place called Bad. Its name is Bad, and Bad means floods. And true to its name, within less than 2 months, we had one of the worst floods in Bad. 75 Patna was flooded, 76 Patna was saved because it was the capital, but the Mufassil areas, as we call, you know, Bad, Danapur, etc., we were under 14 feet of water. I have lots of stories because I went through all those days, but today time won't permit. So let me move ahead. After that, you see, till the end of my career, somehow or the other, disaster management, I think people called me, Anil, you are disaster, you say. I said, no, 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 not a disaster, but I try to manage disaster which are created by you guys, whoever was talking to me. Well, so that is how. But then one thing which I learned, first of all, is that the subject of disaster management, even though it touches everyone, there is no one who can say that, well, disaster is not for me. There is no one, literally no one. The impact may vary from people to people, you know, where you are, which segment of population you belong, this and that, etc. But it is bound to impact everyone. But somehow our path, disaster management and mine, kept on crossing. And this is also a result of that, you see. Now, any history has to be a 360-degree documentation. But we don't get a 360-degree view of anything which is happening, any incident, any development, with be it political, cultural, historical, in any field, you see, you get only partial view, you see, because it's not possible to get 360-degree view, you see. But then that is the attempt, that is the idea which drove us in this exercise, you see. We said lot of things. Disaster Management Act is there, policy is there, the NDMA is there, SDMAs are there, district level DDMAs are there. But how did they come about? All these things are in the public domain, but there's a lot which has been done. NDRF is the visible face of disaster management today, not only in India, but beyond India. You know, many countries, it's difficult, maybe at least a dozen countries. The father of NDRF and the master of NDRF, Mr. KM Singh, Mr. OP Singh, they are both here, you see. He has stirred it and he is the one who really brought it out. So people know that NDRF is there, you see, it is doing. But then how did it come about? In the government also, how did things? So we thought that let us try to get 360-degree view, capture that, you know, and that is how we got across to these 2 dozen experts and key people, and we wanted to know from their experiences the things which were undocumented, which were unsung, which were unheard, which had not been seen, etc., etc. And I'm sure to some extent we have been able to succeed in that. Let me just briefly touch on the personal aspect, you see. Disaster management, I think a lot of experts are there, they will tell you everything about. But let me talk about you and disasters, you see. What is the relationship between you and disasters? You know, each one of us have either gone through or faced some kind of a disaster. But then, how do we? There are, after 9/11, 9/11, I'm sure everyone is familiar, there was a research because there was one case of, I'm forgetting the name of the global financial company, but 3,000 employees, out of them, 2,993 survived from the 70th and above floors of the building. They came down, but 7 didn't survive, you see. Now, this is what led to the research as to how did so many people survive and how is it that a small number of 7 people didn't survive, you see. You know, so a lot depends on how do you respond. If something were to happen, God forbid, killings, human loss of lives can take place because of 2 reasons. One is the building falling. Second is how do we respond to that. So the response of those 2,993 is the case study which came in Time magazine. Now 9/11, we know 2001 it happened, so it is almost 25 years back. It's there, and they defined out of the research 3 kinds of responses were identified. One was the response if something happens, lot of people will freeze. They will not. They will just freeze physically and mentally also. So they will suffer. The second category was of those people who will panic. And if you panic, you can jump from the window, and people do that. You may have seen videos in Delhi fires and other incidents. But fortunately, a third kind of behavior was also identified, which was those who know what to do and they also know how to do. What to do is knowledge, which is do's and don'ts, and how to do is practice, which is rehearsal, practice, etc., etc. And now, I think for practically every disaster, known disaster in the country or in the world, so much research has gone into it that the knowledge part is available. So we know about each and every disaster what to do. How to do is practice. So that is why we advocate in the schools, in the colleges, everywhere, these practices, research must be there, you see. So that is very, very important, you see. And then, so these 3 personalities, they were called disaster personality 1, 2, and 3. So I'm sure everyone here would prefer to be in disaster personality 3. Normally, we want to be in category 1. But in this, it is good to be in the category 3, you see. So that is about, disaster management and you. There is so much to talk about it. In Japan, I learned that disaster management begins at home. We don't see it here. But I think that is the kind of a goal and direction we need to move. In Japan, lovely young children, little children, etc. But if they are crossing road, they will never run across the road. You see, they will always stop at the road, look left and right, see what is the traffic, direction of traffic, etc. Then go to the midpoint. Then again look to the other side, and if the road is clear, then only though they will go ahead. Where have they learnt this? I think for children, first school is the mother. Mother and home is your first school. Should never forget that. And teacher in the school is actually the second teacher. And that is what happens in Japan. And that is how that whole society, right from the childhood, children imbibe the value and the culture of disaster preparedness, etc., etc. Well, so there is so much to talk, but then let me come back to the All India scene, and I'll just try to take a minute. You see, right from 99 when Odisha super cyclone took place, And the government of India under Vajpayee ji, then Prime Minister, had set up a high-powered committee headed by Mr. Jagdish Pant. And I happened to be the member secretary. I had tried to run away from that, but then some destiny, pushed me. I got the charge of disaster management also, if I may say, as a punishment. We know what is the concept of punishment in the government, you see. So that is what had happened. But then today it is my profession and I have a lot of passion, etc., etc. But then country-wise, because a legitimate question is, where has the country come up to this? What is the study about? 99 in Odisha, we lost more than 10,000 lives, you see. And I am a personal witness to that because 29th October it happened, 30th October, 4 o'clock, 3:30, I was on the technical area of Delhi airport with late Mr. George Fernandez, then Defense Minister. We flew to Bhubaneswar. We couldn't land because the winds were still very strong. We went to another place, again forgetting the name, in West Bengal, then drove, etc., etc. Come 2013, after 14, 15 years, file in a stronger cyclone, a stronger winds, and as far as the human deaths were concerned, they were just in 2 digits. That is the story of India going ahead, and Odisha has not done it once. They have done it consistently after that in every cyclone which has happened. And now in the western part of the country, Gujarat is also learning lessons from Odisha as to what to do and how to do. So that is the kind of there is a lot which has happened, but I think the time doesn't permit right now. I think I'll stop here. Thank you, Anshu, for this opportunity. If there is time,
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity to all of us, and there's so much to hear. And you ended at a very nice high note of how India is setting uh, you know, the bar. And I think it's only yesterday that IMD has announced that we are the first country in the world that is now issuing warnings at a 6 kilometer grid. It doesn't happen anywhere else. So this is what this generation of disaster managers has seen. Thank you so much for again for creating this space for all of us. We'll now move to hearing from three of our contributing authors, and all three of them are awardees of the Subhash Chandra Bose Apda Prabandhan Puraskar, the highest award on disaster management conferred by the Government of India and awarded by the Prime Minister himself. We can have no higher powered panel and a more knowledgeable panel to hear from on an evening like this. We'll have Dr. Bhandari, Shri K.M. Singh, and Professor V.K. Sharma sharing their thoughts and the chapters that they have contributed here. Dr. Usha already introduced everybody, but I'll keep adding one anecdote for each person that I invite because it's such a privilege to be here in this gathering, and that will tell you a bit more about the people we are going to hear from. So, Dr. Bhandari, as I invite him, I would like to share that this must have been about 10 years ago that I was in a car. I don't know, sir, if you remember, on a Himalayan journey, thanks to Professor Sharma, who had invited us for a conference. And after a while, Dr. Bhandari said, "Arey, wo wala landslide bahut purana hai." He said, some 30, 35 years ago, he's telling me how he had studied and he had fixed that landslide. And then we stopped there and I took some pictures. And then he moved and he said, another landslide, that one was a very tricky one and how I fixed it. And I realized that at the time I was in primary school, he was traveling and researching and fixing landslides across the Himalayas, and he remembers them individually. So that's our Dr. Bhandari for you. Sir, may I please invite you to share your thoughts on the chapter and how you see this, being of use to all of us.
Namaskar, good evening to everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a privilege and an honor for me to be part of this distinguished gathering of experts, scholars, practitioners, young minds, and I see many of the friends over here with whom I had the privilege of working. Those who spoke before me articulated the spirit of this event admirably. I don't think that I should spend any more time on it. I don't regard this as only a discussion about the book, because this was published quite some time back, and I had the privilege of writing a detailed review on it. I mean, you might be having a copy. I have some copies I'll be able to give you. So that book is there before you. Many of you might have already read it, and some of the highlights will come in this discussion. So I thought that this forum is not merely the discussion about the book. We are here for something far greater. I think we should use this rare opportunity to do whatever is we can to revisit the milestones in India's journey towards disaster resilience. Now, I was thinking that what is that point that I would make which I have not already made in the review that I wrote and all that. So I said, it came to me that it's a golden opportunity for me to build on my review of the book, which I had already done, and offer a few forward-looking suggestions, because I think we have to keep moving. And this also an opportunity for me really to acknowledge the monumental contribution of many of the people who are here and those who are not here, who contributed to the book. This needs acknowledgement because that work is really pioneering in nature. We miss here, particularly General Witch today. I was hoping to see him. He is not there, and I had the great honor of working with him. His chapter is historical document. I think since he is not there, I must take a minute to say this. A record of visionary groundwork he laid the foundation of disaster risk reduction in India. Under his leadership, ND emerged as a professional institution. I underscore the word professional institution in achieving disaster resilience, because I, as a professional, felt very comfortable in the company of the thing when KM Singh Sahab was also a member at NDMA. It became an epicenter of paradigm shift from active relief to proactive preparedness and prevention. General Vij always used to say this, and you also try to. It became a hub of interministerial coordination. You see, many of us, we scientists, engineers, live in our own world, and that doesn't carry very far. But to connect it with the authorities on one hand, the people on the other, was a task which was admirably done. Military synergy and military style precision. What I liked was the discipline that I saw, which generally is not to be seen. And I think this is an area where we need a lot of discipline. Sir, I salute you also, because alongside General Vij, and now I see O.P. Singh Sahab also here, you gave to country something where we have to step back and see, had you not done that, what would be the state of affairs? One of the things to see, the difference we make is all see that such decision, if not taken, what would have been the price of that decision today? That is a question that comes not only in this context, but in every context. And I'll say some of the things which we ought to have done and we did not do, for which we are paying the price today. So before NDRF, and we hear more from you, it's a common knowledge that disaster response was fragmented, ad hoc, and largely state-driven. There was lack of trained people, lack of capacity, and there was enormous suffering. I was personally witness to what Anil Sinha was there at that time when Barwa Sahab, and he was mentioning about George Fernandez and all that, those meetings. And Orissa super cyclone, see the plight of the people there, Gujarat earthquake, tsunami, and all that. So this is the prior to NDRF. And then after NDRF, you know, scenario dramatically began to change. Historic deployment was there in Kosi flood, sir, you mentioned, 2008. Cyclones, earthquakes, I don't want to spend time because we hear from horse's mouth. And seamless integration of NDRF into India's 2009 National Disaster Management Policy. That was the key thing, because, you know, some of these things, they exist in isolation and doesn't carry us very far, although they might in themselves look very attractive things to do. So this is one thing, and international cooperation also grew with the Japan, US, the UK, and so on. We are also privileged to have with us today Anil Kumar Sinha ji and Professor Vinod Sharma. They take me to my memory of HPC, High Powered Committee of this month. And my paper, particularly contributed, has roots in that thing. I'll take a minute to tell about that later, but right now I would like to say that this book takes us to that recorded history where we don't rely on the narratives coming from some different people, those who themselves were involved. If they put it there, it has the credibility and it makes historical contribution. I also pay heartfelt tribute to Shri P. Srivastava. In fact, I'm so happy that you mentioned about him. I wrote his obituary and was constantly in touch with him. I think I felt younger every time I met him. And I'm one who is happy in the sense that I could take advantage of my friendship with him as much as nobody was able to do it. Even after retirement, we were frequently meeting. So he has his chapter on Northeast region, and that gives a glimpse of his lifetime dedication. He has done much more. But I remember the first time I met him was because of you. You had an event organized, and he was the one who was the architect of that event there, where I saw the power of NDRF and all that kind of thing. So it is he who has contributed the chapter. We are glad that chapter is a part of this, but I would like to say that since he is no more, one would have to see his other contributions also and see them as whole. Coming to the book itself now, it's not just a scholarly compilation or a living document. It's a testament of decades dedication. You know, many of the things which are reported here, their ideas were old and all that. Slowly and slowly, as you also said, 2017 you started, and it ended up in 2023. So generally, unless it's said, people will not believe that. So, and it's a milestone in India's literature. I am having my personal library in which every book that is published in India or abroad, I try to get a copy. And I can tell you this, that I consider this to be a milestone in several ways. A mirror of our past, a compass for our present, and a blueprint of our future. Because I see many of the ideas embodied in this will keep us busy, occupied for many, many years. I mentioned 5 strengths of the book. First is that it provides first-hand insight. Chapters authored by practitioners who shaped the India's disaster management landscape. So that is very important because these days, when we find that people depend so much on internet news and they don't have in-depth information, they carry us in a different direction. So it is here that this book will leave for people a credible information on which they can build further. It gives multidisciplinary perspective, goes beyond technocrat. I am a technocrat and I often first see the technocratic views, but weaving into sociology, public health, urban planning, political science, and all that, those areas is covered. It also achieves a shift to governance lens. You know, normally we talk about disaster management, but it's a question of governance and focusing on accountability, institutional reform, and decentralization. So this is one thing which I find that at least that message should go. Very often, even now in expert discussions, I find people talk about isolated management issues and things like that. But unless we have a holistic perception, I don't think we do justice with the subject. It delivers case records grounded in reality. That's also the thing, because proof of the pudding is the eating. We may say many things, but unless they are brought to work and unless we experience firsthand of how we deliver it on the ground, I think much of it remains just reporting. So, be that cyclones, COVID, Uttarakhand disaster, and so on. And fifth is the make our initiative policy relevant. You see, that is where I say that vision, strategy, tactics, policy, these are all very important. Otherwise, we make contributions, they do some good in a limited sense, but they do not connect to deliver ultimately. So, what this book is unique amidst a flood of publications. I mentioned quickly, time is short, so I just mentioned that you must all be familiar with the Home Ministry publications annual reports, every annual report, and you find that there's no connect between one annual report and that doesn't carry the same, even if some topics are there which need to be continuous in our memory in order to connect to the last mile thing. We find that very important information is there but fragmented, prepared. So then we have IC Center Governance, New Delhi. In 2021, they came out with a special issue on disaster management, Journal of Governance. Now, that also contains a number of very useful papers. It's important that we know about this when we discuss this book. NDMA and NIDM carries a long list of publications. 2023, I must mention this, Rupa published a book on Resilient India, stating how our present Prime Minister has transformed India's national disaster management paradigm. And it has got some of the information which was not available to us, has appeared there. And of course, INE publication. So it is unique because it covers untold stories, it builds continuity between past and present, it traces genesis of National Disaster Management Act, NDRF, NIDM, and HPC. It captures lessons from major disasters. And one thing very important I mentioned, it dares dissent where needed. Such is the forthright chapter by Lieutenant General J.R. Bhardwaj. Finally, I will conclude by saying what ought to be the recommendations then. I have said that so many things have been said already, but we must look forward. So, action-oriented suggestions. What is the roadmap ahead? Let me conclude by offering a few. Urgency to document India's flagship projects. We have all been saying that paradigm shift to from relief-centric approach to mitigation and preparedness and so how do we achieve this? How do we integrate disaster mitigation with development planning? We have been saying this. So there are so many flagship projects have been carried out since that message had gone to the professionals and to number of projects have been finished now. So it is time to look back, analyze that how we were able to integrate this and how our national plans, guidelines, SOPs, manuals, they get aligned to development planning and multi-hazard resilience based on the lessons that we learned from this. Then second is to determine effort to tap the power and potential of technology. You will see that still we are miles away from the real power of technology. We have not tested the potential of technology. So this is one thing which we would like to see in the future work. Harness the power of local, global, local synergy. Now, international connect is very important, and we have to revive the unfinished agendas in complete slow motion. And this is my paper. I've not been able to tell you more about it, but two things I would say. One is the vision of disaster-free India, which was evolved in the high-power committee. After a lot of discussion, I had to do a lot of defense thing on my PhD thesis. I didn't have to work that hard as in this to convince people, because even Professor Arya, who is not here, he said, let's call it disaster resilient India. But I was saying that let's dream big so that we'll achieve something substantial. And I convinced the high-powered committee that should be disaster-free India. It was recommended as the vision carried out by the HPC report. NIDM followed it. NDMA in the beginning did it. Then it was forgotten something. And again, there's a mix-up on that. Yeah, okay. And this disaster knowledge network. This is one thing that we have to do. Now, book under discussion must reach all those for whom it is intended. I think we can produce these books, but unless they reach this. So I hope that all the publishers and editors would put their best to see that it gets delivered. And expert practitioners, policymakers must ensure that the spirit of disaster risk reduction is sustained, the science is reclaimed, the knowledge is institutionalized. Let us not be the end of, let us not consider this the end of journey, but the beginning of a deeper commitment to resilience, responsibility, and reform. So I'm sorry I took a little longer, but I was
I know, sir.
looking forward
It's
to this opportunity to say that whereas we are quite happy with what has been achieved, but a lot more remains to be done, and we must continue.
Thank you, sir. I'm so sorry I had to rush you. There's so much we would all love to hear. It's just that being the moderator, it's also my duty to make sure that everyone reaches home to their families safely in time. And it's not my place to, to cut short and moderate time. So what I'll do is, for every speaker, we're running about 25 minutes behind schedule. What I'll do is, when 10 minutes for every speaker is over, I'll very politely turn on my mic and drop my pen on the table, just as an indication of how we are doing on time. But thank you so much, sir. And we move now to Shri K.M. Singh. Sir, so much has been said about how we owe the NDRF and the civil defense in the act to you. But there's so much more that you have done. We would really love to hear your inputs.
Thank you, Anshu. Distinguished gathering over here, Shri Anil Sinha ji, Sunita Reddy ji. Well, first of all, I must compliment both of you for taking the initiative of getting this book published. It is almost an encyclopedia of disaster. It's a wonderful publication. And well, I'm conscious of the fact that we are already far behind several time, and I will request you to just tell me where to stop, and I will stop. Thank you. Well, I have written a chapter on genesis and evolution of NDRF in this book, and I will confine myself only to that. Well, as far as the NDRF is concerned, a lot of good words have been said. It has today become a household name in India and well known abroad also. It has earned a niche for itself for its professionalism in disaster response. It's a multidisciplinary, multi-skilled force, trained and equipped as per international standard, not only for natural disaster, but also for CVR in emergency. But going into the genesis, the concept was conceived after 2001 Gujarat earthquake by the steering committee constituted under the then Home Secretary, Sri Gopalaswamy. And I happened to be a member of that steering committee as DGCSF. And way back in 2003, it was all finalized that NDRF will have 8 battalions, 2 battalions each to BSF, CRPF, CISF, ITBP, and DG were asked to put in place. And then came in 2005 the Disaster Management Act, a visionary piece of legislation where there is a chapter on brief chapter on response, and NDRF has been mandated as a specialist force, and superintendence, direction, and control of NDRF was given to NDMA. And as the founder member of NDMA in 2005, I was given the responsibility of raising this force from scratch. So I will start from there. It was an uphill task and a few challenges that we had to face in the beginning. First was the mindset in the middle echelon of the administration, where the impression was that 8,000 force will be lying idle, we can use for law and order duties, and when there is a disaster, we'll give that. it was very difficult to change that mindset that the force needs to be trained not only in natural disaster but also CBR and emergency. So that was the first challenge, lack of appreciation in some quarters. Number two was that when we were constituted and we had the first meeting with the four DGs, asking them to give us the manpower sanctioned to them 2 years ago, the response was very lukewarm, saying that will take 1 or 2 years because we have still not recruited and trained them. And our Vice Chairman General Vij, former Army Chief, we are all totally disillusioned that if we don't have manpower, how will we raise the force? And at that juncture, almost a bomb explosion came in the terms of a reference from Army headquarters through Ministry of Defense, through MHA, saying that CAPF, Central Paramilitary Forces, do not have trained people in medical, veterinary, technical side and all that. They will never be able to raise the force. Army's claim was, we have experience of handling such a series of disasters. We have medical corps, veterinary corps, engineering corps, and signal corps and all that. We will put in place a force within 6 months. And then that was the biggest problem, that the Vice Chairman General Vij has seen that the manpower is also not available beside anything else. And Army is. So the most difficult task for me was to carry conviction with our Vice Chairman. And I told him, sir, disaster response force has to be a civilian force. It is a civilian interface. It has to interface with district administration on almost day-to-day basis. Army's role is different. Army can always be requisitioned whenever there is a need. Civil Defense Authority is aid to. But the NDRF must remain with paramilitary forces. And I told him, sir, give me a couple of years' time. I will raise the force. It's a challenge to me. I must say he gave me full support. And that was the beginning. Then that problem was that Act provided for post of a DG NDRF. But first 7 years, till 2013, it was always an additional charge. No full-fledged DG NDRF was posted. NDMA was virtually handling it. And that was a big problem. For the first time in 2014, 13 or 14, OP Singh was the first full-fledged DG. And I must say he did commendable work. Whatever foundation we had done. As you say, when you raise a building, if the foundation is weak, you can't raise anything. We had done the work of raising a strong foundation, and thereafter from OP Singh onwards, they have taken it to a great height. So that was non-availability of DG and DRF, and also the manpower. That was a problem. But another major problem was, by some or other, when he started training the people, and when the floods came, our NDRF people used to go to the state or district people. The SP or DM will not even look at NDRF because it was an unknown force. They had no faith. They had full faith in army, and they will go to the army. So how to make NDRF acceptable to go ahead was a major channel. So then we came up with three concepts. One was proactive deployment. And what it did was that until then, the system was that if there is a disaster anywhere, the state administration will call the MHA, and MHA will tell some paramilitary force and teams will go. Long time. We said that 8 battalions, but every battalion has 3-4 states as their area of responsibility. And those states in the area of responsibility, the local SP or whoever may be, will contact the battalion commander directly on phone, and battalion commander has full authority to send the manpower without seeking clearance from NDMA or anybody else. So that was the proactive deployment, and that worked. And next was pre-positioning of NDRF. We started that whenever there is IMD warning of any flood or cyclone, we'll put the NDRF team even before the event so that they are readily available. And third thing, what we did was to make it more acceptable. We gave an responsibility to NDRF, which was beyond its mandate, and that was community capacity building and awareness generation, where the NDRF teams, while going for familiarization in their area of operation, would, with the help of district administration, will do community capacity building, awareness generation, and that's how they had interface with Panchayat level and block level, and that worked very well. 2 minutes more? 2 minutes. So that was the initial challenges that we overcame one by one. Then thereafter, of course, NDRF has done very well. But in the initial period, I'll very briefly touch on one or two incident which was a major achievement for NDRF. First was the Kosi flood in 2008. NDRF was only 2.5 years old. And Kosi flood, the Kosi barrage, it was a breach and it was devastation. As the barrage breach widened, the flood water started coming. After a couple of days, we had entire Kosi belt, 10, 15 feet deep water. Every village was submerged. So, but then when it started, we immediately swung into action. Bihar had no NDRA battalion, but from Calcutta, from Guwahati, and from Mundli battalion, Odisha, we sent as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, plus reinforcements from Delhi, by including the motorized boats and all, by Air Force aircraft to Pune. And so, within a span of 2 days, we had 175 boats, 1,000 people, and NDRF rescued more than 1 lakh people from the Kosi flood. And Nitish Kumar wrote to Prime Minister, so did Rajsekhar Reddy from Andhra Pradesh, seeking more battalions from India. The battalions for their states also. And with this, NDRF absolutely had a major breakthrough, and 4 more battalions were sanctioned. Then one more, first international response. The 2011 Japan Fukushima Great Japan Eastern earthquake. Now, when it happened, it was devastation, and teams from various countries came there. NDRF also went there a little late, but then nuclear leakage happened. Teams from all countries left because of radiation. But I must tell you that NDRF is one force which is trained and equipped for CBRN also. So they had gone well prepared for radiation, nuclear, and they did commendable work amidst radiation in -10 temperature and earned a lot of laurels in Japan. And lastly, I will say that Nepal earthquake, it happens in 2015 by then OPC by DG NDRF. It happened at 11:55, and NDRF response time is so good that I don't want to go in detail, but within 5 hours, at 5 o'clock in the evening, the NDRF team, 3 teams with equipments were there in Kathmandu. International response standard is that teams must reach within 48 to 72 hours. Here is the force reached within 5 hours, which is something of record for any international deployment. Well, there is much more, but I think I have run short of time. I must stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, and we owe so much to you. And you mentioned these 3, but I'm also reminded, we all remember how the Kashmir earthquake, 8th of October 2005, the NDMA was just formed. You were working out of Centaur Hotel, and how you led that from the front. And I remember how KM Singh sir had told us we were building houses on the line of control. और इन्होंने मुझे और मनु को बोला था कि कोई एक भी ट्रक, अगर हमारी प्रॉब्लम ये थी जम्मू से सामान ले जाते थे हम, तो वो ट्रक्स चुंगियों पे रुकते थे बिकॉज ऑफ द सिक्योरिटी कंसर्न. सो ही कॉल्ड द सीएम्स ऑफिस एंड देन ही टोल्ड अस, अगर एक भी ट्रक रात के 2 बजे भी रुके तो मुझे फ़ोन करना उसी टाइम, बिकॉज वी हैड अ लेटर फ्रॉम हिम under his signature pasted on every truck. So we owe you so much to listen from you, sir. We will find more opportunities, and thank you so much for that. And with that, we move to the last panelist of this author contribution. I come to Professor VK Sharma, who's been my former teacher in college, and it's due to him that I'm sitting here. Otherwise, I would have probably been a senior town planner in some town planning department. So I owe him a lot. And Sunita ji spoke about applied, knowledge and practice. And the one memory I have of Professor Sharma was March 1999 Chamoli earthquake. सर हम बैठ के कागज़ें लिखा करते थे, and I got a call from Professor Sharma. I am in a car, we are leaving in 2 hours to go to Chamoli. And I was completely stunned. He says, "Do you want to come?" And that was such a learning opportunity. My first real immersion. We were there, no grids, nothing working. So that's the kind of Professor Sharma is. The stage is yours in about 7 odd minutes. If you could just share your top thoughts on this.
Thank you very much, Anshuji, and good evening to everyone. I also join my other, fellow writers of this or authors of the book in complimenting Anil Sinha ji and Sunita Reddy ji for giving us, this opportunity to write, our experiences. Let me tell you that when this invitation came from Anil Sinha ji, normally people ask me because I am professor of disaster management, and people say that I am one of the pioneers, in this area. So they give a topic, maybe you write on floods or write on, cyclone of Odisha, or give a specific topic, to me. And it's very easy for me, the lesson learned, from that disaster. And we become, it's a sort of gymnastic for us and my colleagues in NCDM that we were doing it, for each and every disaster, people used to ask us to write, even newspapers, so I was getting that type of invitations. But this invitation was altogether different. And because we work very closely, for long time, very long time. And let me tell you that disaster management was not my subject. I did my PhD in environment. I am an ecologist basically. I taught in several universities outside India, in ecology. So my area was ecology, environment. Unfortunately, there was Middle East. This war was there in 1990, and we returned back to the country. And here we were searching for the job, and we are fortunate that we got job in Indian Institute of Public Administration. And in IAPA, there was no scope of ecology environment because it was not very popular those days. Thanks to IDNDR, that during IDNDR, United Nations asked IAPA to hold a workshop on disaster management, on preparedness. And this job was given to me. So it was just, it's by chance, I should say. And I'm thankful to, Sidhuji, late Shri Sidhu, he was secretary. And my director of IIPA, he was his batchmate. So they discuss, and my director sent me to the Secretary Agriculture, and Mr. RCA Jain, and all these people. Late Shri RCA Jain, he was Joint Secretary Disaster Management. And in fact, this task was given to me. And the time, they said, okay, we will have to do it in, this year. That's it. So any time, but we will have to do this world class. Sidhuji was very, particular about world class, and every time he used to say that this should be very good workshop, or training. And that was the beginning, actually. I started learning, and we, we got in touch with ADPC, we got in touch with UNDP, we got in touch with all different institutions, and that's how, within 6 months, and then I realized that country is full of, very, very eminent people. It's not Professor Arya only or Shri Bhandari ji, but I prepare a list of about 100 people, and our IITs and our engineering institutions, our SERC, our Central Building Research Institute, and the list was very long actually. BMTPC and all these people, they were all jewel. When I talk to them, I find, oh my God, these people are only, we are I mean, there is no need of any expert. But then we collaborated with ADPC, and ADPC, they advised us that because UNDP is organizing it, so maybe UNDMT, maybe people from New York, so that became a very big event actually. And that was the beginning. And that gave me the idea that I think the weakness of the country is capacity building, awareness, education, because we are nowhere. And then we gave a proposal to Ministry of Agriculture. So Sinhaji, learned all these stories many times. He said, why don't you write it? I said, sir, ये तो कोई लिखने की चीज है नहीं. It was all struggle, it was frustration basically, start from my own director. वो कह रहे हैं यार पागल है तुम, why you are wasting my time? Government is not having a penny. And you are talking about a national center for disaster management. Who will give you a national center for disaster management? This I am talking of 1993. So 93, our economic condition was, we know it, that there was nothing. So, and my proposal was saying, no, we should have our own vehicle, we should have about 24 people, we should have, and because I prepared, and that was a very small proposal actually. I was saying it is not very big, it is just a national center, it is not institute. So I said, sir, it is a frustration actually. So you are saying that you write your all frustration. He said, no. This is a learning actually. People will learn that how you get, इतना सब होने के बाद में आप लगे रहे, भाई, what was your interest? And the interest was that in case really you enter in this area, and because my background was environment, so I was thinking it is very much related to environment. So I was having this wrong notion that disaster management is nothing. It is, अगर mismanagement होता है environment से, so then there is a disaster. Then I started learning, the disaster medicine, then the sociological aspect, the economic aspect, the, role of NGOs, and all these things, and I lost my subject, and entered in this subject. So I try to give in this chapter actually, it's a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting, experience for me. And I divided it into 3 parts. One is the setting up of this center, which become National Institute of Disaster Management. The second part was that how changes, in 3 decades, lots of changes, And because my experience started from Uttarkashi earthquake, so Uttarkashi, then Latur earthquake, in 93, then 99 Odisha super cyclone, then Gujarat earthquake, then Jabalpur earthquake and whatnot. So and then thanks to Anshu and Manu, these are my strength actually. Apart from my colleagues, like Chandrani, we were having a very small group, but very dedicated group. And these people were working without any money. I never give them any project. I never give them any, they were searching, from other sources, but IIPA or NCDM, we couldn't give anything to them. But they were full support to IIPA. Even in high-powered committee, Anil Sinhaji will tell, I think they were with us all the time. And so thank you very much. So that part I have given. And the last part is, that was Sikkim. In 2012, I don't know how, Honorable Chief Minister of Sikkim, he invited me to become Vice Chair of Sikkim Disaster Management Authority. I said, sir, I am already professor in an institute. I'm retired, but still I'm working and they are giving me full salary. So I don't need your salary. He said, okay, you become honorary, Vice Chair. And that gave me, this 10, 12 years gave me the opportunity, whatever I learned from different part of the country, that I'm implementing in that state. And I again compliment the officers of Sikkim and the politicians that they never interfere in my work. And they are really encouraging me. Day after tomorrow, Honorable Prime Minister is going to Sikkim. And they have a full paragraph, in the speech of CM, that how Sikkim wants to become resilient Sikkim. So I think this is my, small contribution, and I could write in the book. Anshuji, I'm a teacher, and when I'm having this kind
Thank you,
of
sir.
audience, I can speak for whole day.
No, sir.
But sorry, that
No,
time
not
is
at all,
very
sir.
constant.
Sir, this is such a precious evening for all of us to have all of you on this panel and to hear from you. I think since we have a formal constraint of bringing this to a close at a particular time, I think we'll take about 10 more minutes. That would keep us within 20 minutes of a stretch, but that's only a formal closure. The editors and the authors are still here. We can mingle around, we can step out. We would just want to release people who need to travel far to get home. So formally, we can take another 10 odd minutes. We still need to, wrap this up. And I think the 2-3 important things we need to do is to see how this comes back. And for this, we will now move to our two panelists and commentators. With thanks to you, Professor Sharma, as always, you give this very vivid description and you show us how things have evolved. But let me now request Shri A.K. Mangotra. So you have seen this in a very practical sense, as you roll with DG and looking at the border roads and management. You've seen how many things which come to our knowledge, but many things that also don't combine to make very complex disasters. And we've heard a lot. So if you could,
border management is only half the
is
job.
only half.
Half is disaster management. It is actually BMDM.
G. So, sir, hearing what you have heard, a very quick comment from you on how we should try to learn from this book.
Right.
Make use.
Thank you, Sinha Sahab, madam, and all the experts of the disaster management family in India. I think after seeing this book, I feel that we have come a long way, sir. Because when I joined service, there was no paper, nothing to go except the whatever we heard from our seniors and from their predecessors. Mr. Sinha was lucky that the flood hit his subdivision or district. After 2 months, he joined. In my subdivision, my first night itself, I joined. We joined in the middle of July, August. That is height of the monsoon, and the flood hit. I had no idea. I was sleeping in my bungalow, and my chowkidar knocks at the door. He said, "There's a crowd waiting outside. They want to talk to you." I said, "Kya ho gaya 12 baje?" Then they said, "Okay, we'll come." They started talking in their East Bengal, dialect. I had no clue what they were talking. I asked him to just translate what he was saying. He says, "Sir, they are saying that there has been a flood in the village. They have already set up their camp in the school, and please send chida and good from tomorrow morning." So the people-centric approach is what I learned, that they are, it's an existential problem for them because they are so used to this that they know that tomorrow the government is going to set up the center here, and from there they will start issuing us rations. So they said, "We are all settled. Please send the rations from tomorrow." That was the one thing. Secondly, sir, seeing this book, I think it reads like a who's who of disaster management in India. Singh Saab, Bhandari Saab, my friend and colleague, Dr. Sharma. And I think you have this wide coverage, widest possible coverage. There are one or two areas I'll come to later, which I think can be strengthened. But I think from the historical perspective to the implementation areas is something which you have covered very, very well. And what I found very interesting was there's all a personal touch in all the papers. Personally, what they have gone through. It's not a cut and dried, high impact journal type of a writing. So I must say, sir, that I was very impressed to see that you have a separate chapter on the Northeast. Northeast is very important from the point of view of disaster management. And not only natural disasters, there are actually man-made disasters. They are more than the natural disasters. And you would have seen yesterday, the governor had to be flown out in a helicopter because he was garroted by some people. So these are the type of disasters the people in the Northeast face. And talking of the Northeast, Mr. P.P. Srivastava, in fact, the government of India had set up a separate service for the Northeast. It was known as the Indian Front. And Mr. P.P. Srivastava was one of the leading lights, along with Mr. I.P. Gupta, who had served throughout their lives. And they had, they were trained in the Northeast only. Later on, of course, they got merged into the IAS. But with Mr. P.P. Srivastava, he was my boss for almost 5 years. And it was a pleasure working with him. And so the very fact that you have given a lot of emphasis on the Northeast really shows that you have put the balance back, because otherwise Northeast tends to get lost in the this thing. Another thing, sir, on the international cooperation, we get a lot of two-way cooperation, because in this we also have to learn from other countries. Normally, in many of the areas, like let's say renewable energy, etc., it's a one-way thing. We are talking to the south, we are giving them capacity building technologies, etc. But in this field, I think we need to learn also from a lot from other countries, those who have done well. I had the occasion to work with Dr. Kalam and to organize his foreign visits. I remember when we went to Philippines, he said, I want to know how they are doing their earthquake prediction. Please let me meet with the scientists and find out what is happening. And after the talk, after he had a meeting, they said, sir, we'll show you a 3D simulator of the earthquake. So we said, you have such a thing? He says, yes. So Dr. Kalam was very keen to go inside. Of course, the security told, please don't go inside. We don't know what will happen, because if a real earthquake strikes at that time, what will you do? That is the first thing. Second experience of the international cooperation was when Dr. Kalam was on a visit to Switzerland. And he said, I want to meet the head of the Red Cross. He held a separate meeting. Of course, we were boating on the lake, and he was holding a meeting at that time on the banks of the lake. And the first thing the Red Cross chief told Dr. Kalam, he said, we are very sorry. The Red Cross took 6 hours to respond to your call for earthquake. So 6 hours, and he was feeling sorry. So Dr. Kalam came back and reported this to the government. He said, this is what our things are. Then, sir, we have a good role of the civil society also in that. There's a lot of things to be done, whether it is the responders or the care providers or the rehabilitators. But I think of late, the civil society seems to be taking a little bit of a backseat with Trump pulling out of the climate change negotiations and the FCRA regulations being tightened, etc. So I think this is one area which is going to be slightly hit. Then on the weaknesses, sir, the 2 or 3 things. One I found was the financing. I think we need, we may in your second edition, may something more on the financing, the SDR, the state disaster management funds, etc. And also the climate funds financing, because I was looking at one of the research topics of climate change adaptation and disaster risk resilience. But I went to NIDM for about 2-3 weeks. I didn't find much documentation there, because this is an area of the future. We are going to get a lot of funds for adaptation, and I think this is one area in which we need to look at. I don't think I'd like to take more time, except to tell you that in the civil services examination, disaster and disaster management, this is a separate subject which has been introduced in the general studies. And Mr. Anil Sinha and we sit together on a couple of boards with Professor Sharma and Mr. O.P. Singh, and there are a few others who have just left. And I must tell you that for the last 2 years, the girls who have topped the civil services exam are the students of Mr. Anil Sinha. He has trained them properly in the field of renewable energy and disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And you end at a very nice note of the value of that knowledge transfer brings, and the girls topping. So thank you so much for that. Professor Chandrani, we come to you. And Chandrani, while we've heard a lot of wisdom and guidance from the elders, you're in the thick of your career. You are at the School of Planning and Architecture. You are shaping research and education. You're the National Center of Excellence for Urban and Disaster Management. Where do you see avenues, not just for the book, but for the kind of wisdom we hear around, to feed into our streams of research and education that you're steering? Because we still don't have enough textbooks for the stuff we need to know.
Thank you, Anshu, and thank you very much, sir and ma'am, for inviting. As teachers, we know we know how to read the nonverbal cues, so I'll keep myself very, very short. brief in terms of what I say. I would, like to go back to the time when I was working under with Professor Sharma and Anil Sinha ji sir, and for the HPC, and two things have still stuck with me. One is his way when he said that institutional memory must be very, very strong. So, and everything that the institution does needs to be documented, and which forms the institutional memory. The other word that he used was a Munshiji approach. That in a small zamindari where the Munshiji gives 1 paisa, he writes it down, and he takes it back the next day, he writes it down. So that shows the power of documentation and the importance of documentation, and that is where this book is so very important, and it fills such an important gap, that all the experiences, because whosoever has written, all the authors have actually lived disasters. It's not just academics, it's not just policy, it is actually their life's experiences with research, with disaster management and disaster risk reduction. And that is why this book is such a, which will, I'm sure, will hold such an important place in the entire disaster management literature. Um that is, and one more thing which Professor Sharma taught me was, once a disaster manager is always a disaster manager. He can't ever keep the baton down. So these are two things which I carry even to this day. So having worked in the field of disaster management, I work as a teacher. I shifted to academia in terms of teaching and research, but even there where I teach urban planning, I teach disasters and settlement planning. So I'm not really, once a disaster manager is always. So I also offer a course on which is on disasters and settlement planning, to which is an institutional elective, which is rather popular, which is open to all classes, all years, all batches, all specializations. So I have people from the building engineering management department. I also have people from the environmental planning department, and also from architectural conservation department taking this course. So that gives a very that what, when we talk about the multidisciplinarity and the intersectionality of disaster management, I think these are things which kind of take us forward. And as far as research is concerned, I'm very glad, sir, you spoke of climate finance, because tomorrow one of my students is going to submit a master's thesis on climate finance or municipal finance, and how the municipal government in Pune can integrate climate finance. What could be the sources, and how urban planning can help. Uh, Tomorrow again, I have doctoral students who are researching on diverse fields in terms of the resettlement after cyclones in peri-urban Kolkata, to digital participatory tools for risk-informed planning. They will present their research tomorrow, so that's again another. So now my only submission here is that there is a lot of research happening all across the country on various fields of disaster management. We also have a Center for Urban Disaster Studies, and but then, what next? What, as a nation, we need to think of, where, how these very, very brilliant researchers, and I'm very glad to say that I lead a team of very brilliant researchers, and I'm sure all of us who are teachers will say this. Now, how do we get this research to inform policy? How do we get this research to take the country to the emerging fields in terms of science and technology, in terms of AI, in terms of ML, in terms of the other studies. For example, Anshu did a very good study with Microsoft on hyperlocal planning. through AI. And we are also encouraging some of our students to take it up. So these were just a few of my observations on this book. The absolute, relevance of your book in present times, and how we can probably hope for a sequel, perhaps. And so that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chandrani. I did not dare to give any verbal or non-verbal cues, but thank you for being so sharp and so brief. And I think you raise a very valuable point that there's so much institutional memory in the heads of people who've run this show for years. I think even the papers in this book only do very partial justice. So I think whether it's sequels of the books or whether there are podcasts, there are newer things we do, but the conversation must go on. Probably we should also meet again, sir, as a part two of this, which is more interactive. And we can get everyone to contribute more. It will be not fair to straight away go to closing comments from the editors. So let me very quickly invite a couple of comments. If anyone in the audience here has a very brief, very quick comment or question, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and share your thoughts. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Professor Suranjan Das from Calcutta. First, congratulations for the book. Could I take 2 points that were raised first by Dr. Reddy on the community involvement, and second by Professor Singh about inclusive disaster management? We are talking about international collaboration, etc. But have we ever thought of integrating the indigenous knowledge system for disaster management with a modern approach?
Thank you so much. I think that's a comment we'll come back to the editors with. Anyone else? A quick question or comment? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is Dr. Neetu Goswami. Thank you, Sunita Reddy ma'am, for inviting. And I'm very glad to see VK Sharma sir. I was an associate at IIPA. I am a policy writer and a teacher of environment science. So, what my one of the things that I have worked for policy research in social justice ministry, and where I was looking at the governance, where the people with disabilities and all the disaster struck. In the governance, when I was searching and researching the books, and I just wanted to have some research, I could not find much because it was not very much available or readily all available outside India and all. So this is a very good book. I think if it is available online, I would love to read, and congratulations to both of you.
Thank you so much to both of you. I think traditional wisdom, a very important point. And ma'am, as you shared, how to make it more accessible. And probably you had touched upon that, Dr. Sunita. And I think there can be many other ways, like you've shared today, and we could have more conversations, more in-depth conversations with the authors. We could record those. So even while technically taking the book online may not be possible, but can we think of other ways? And that would be my request also. And with that, let me hand this back to our editors. May I request Shri Anil Sinha and Dr. Sunita Reddy to please just help us close this. There's so much that has been said. How do we bring this together? At what note should we close, and when should we decide to do more on this? Over to you, both of you, Sunita ji.
Thank you so much, Anshu. And I'm really overwhelmed with all the compliments and blessings from all senior experts here who have dedicated their lifetime, and some has been captured in this book. And as we rightly can anticipate, how writing a book and bringing it on table takes many years. It's a bit piece by piece by piece which we put down, and finally when you see this, all our hard work we generally forget, and we are happy having the product in front of us. But our challenge is to disseminate this across the country, and we are trying our best that we can bring it in a Indian edition with low cost, so that even students can buy and we can have more in the libraries. And as you pointed out about indigenous knowledge, we have wealth of indigenous knowledge across communities, and more so with the indigenous communities. I just saw one book which has come on disasters, but I think there's much more to write. And we'll be very happy to collaborate with all our colleagues, and whether it's in academia or in the profession, where we can all come together and bring more publication, though it means a lot of work. But we are more enthused now by seeing Professor Ian Davis, by K.M. Singh sir and Vandari sir and Sharma sir putting so much of hard work and still so full of energy to do more and more. So we are just beginning now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunita. Thank you, Anshu. And thanks to everyone once again. I think it's been a wonderful evening. What we have discovered through the book and through the discussion is that while a lot has been done, but as we discover that a lot has been done, we also discover that a lot more has to be done, you see. It has become such a wide ranging and encompassing whole of India, every part of India, every section of India, that kind of a. The Disaster Management Act has been amended recently. In fact, I have not really had the opportunity to read that, and understand that. But I'm sure it has opened new areas. While they strengthened certain things, they opened new areas. There is a point which Mr. K.M. Singh has been mentioning always as far as the definition of disasters is concerned, is about whether animals, or livestock, you see, they are part of our life. Are they covered or covered only by implication, etc., etc., you see. Now, just two things, I'll be very brief. I feel proud that of late India has taken initiatives. Instead of only joining the bandwagon of initiatives taken by other countries, number of them, you and others, etc. But India took the initiative in recent years. One is CDRA, Center for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, you see. The second is International Solar Alliance. And there are a couple of more also, you see, which is great. And now hundreds of countries, you see, not just one or two or dozen, but nearly 100 countries have joined these initiatives. I think we need to understand, what is happening in those aspects, you see. This question which Andani and Mangotas have posed, you see, what next, I think is very, very critical, you see. Whether it is climate finance or AI or ML or whatever, etc. The scenario has been changing so fast. Technology has really overtaken. We are governed by the technology. In fact, I think that aspect perhaps is not really technology is it is again intertwined very deeply with whatever is happening in the disaster management. And yet somehow that needs to be really studied, you see. Civil society, etc., etc. Just 2 points. One is that having said whatever has been talked, there is a lot which the civil society can do, which is my belief system now, you see. That is my passion. And as a civil society initiative, which does not depend on government as such, is this little humble initiative, but very, very ambitious, of no disasters, you see. It is for the tagline says making disasters everyone's business. And I think I tell you, perhaps whole thesis could be done, several theses could be done on this, making disasters everyone's business. It is so tough, it is so wide and encompassing, etc. A lot. That is where we need demystification and simplification, you see, because we are talking of people out there. As you go out on the road, in the sabji wala, here, there, etc. As I said, disaster management concerns them perhaps more than what it concerns us. Are we doing enough? Is everyone doing enough? Government is doing a lot, but still, is it really making a difference to them? If it is so, I'm sure, then what is the difference? What is the kind of difference? That is one thing. So, no disasters, I will just say one more thing, that every one of you, I would request and appeal, get associated with this. You see, it is running totally pro bono. There is no money coming from anywhere, you see. It's mainly online. But it believes in, stories. घर घर की कहानी, हर हर की जुबानी, you see. We want to collect stories from every house, every home, through every mouth, you see. Elders, others, etc., because they have all seen it, you see. So that is something, it's there online. Please do get associated. Secondly, let me end by saying two things, two slogans, because they are very, very effective and potent. Slogans in general, not only these two slogans. So generate your own slogans. There are youngsters sitting. My grandchildren are sitting here. I didn't introduce them. My grandchildren. I'm so proud of all of them. You see. So it is for them and for everyone. The slogans are आपदा नहीं हो भारी यदि पूरी हो तैयारी. It is about preparedness. A disaster will not cost you much if you have done the homework, if you have done the preparedness, which is the homework, planning, understanding, what I talked of, rehearsal, this and that, etc., etc. The second slogan is long term, it is developmental. विकास ऐसा हो जो आफत से बचाए. Development, we are talking India becoming now fourth largest economy, you see. So whether we are on this side or that side, you see, there have been some controversies or whatever you say. But India is bound now to become fourth and very shortly, within a couple of years, maybe third, you see. Isn't it? Now, when that is unfolding, then what is the kind of vikas we should be having? So विकास ऐसा हो जो आफत से बचाए. अगर ये विकास है, it should save us. ऐसा ना हो कि आफत बन जाए. This vikas should not become afat. Afat is disaster. Because vikas became disaster for children in Bhuj. Vikas became disaster for patients and doctors in Bhuj hospital. That is just one example. There are several other examples. But we want vikas which is disaster resilient, disaster safe, disaster resistant, etc., etc. So with this note, I will like to end you. Yeah, thank you. I
Thank you,
think
sir.
one thing I'll say. I think Anshu has done a impossible job. And I knew that if anyone could do it, it was only Anshu. So that is why Anshu is here.
Oh, sir, thank you so much. I would have said it's a privilege, but I think Sunita ji in her closing comments used the word blessing, and I think that's the highlight of this event for me and for many of us, to have this blessing where all of you with the years of experience, and you've groomed us, you've groomed our generation, and there's the next generation sitting here. So this event is almost like a blessing that we can collate all of this, we can get this conversation started. And I would say it started, it's not the end of the conversation on the book. Uh, um, uh, Deep thanks, of course, to Professor Ian Davis and Professor Dhananjay Singh for setting the tone, to Dr. Bhandari, KM Singh sir, Professor Sharma for the sharings from the chapters, Mangotra Saab and Chandrani for your very, incisive comments, but also from the audience. And my apologies, we couldn't share enough in the open floor, but you've been so clued in, you've been so awake. I think just the aura, the environment in this room, probably also because of the blessings of Shivastav sir and others who are not with us today, but I believe they are always around us. They guide us. So thank you so much for the blessings. And thanks to Usha ji, who introduced all of us, and her team for having this evening organized here. Thank you so much. And I think most of all, again, to both of you for having this conversation, having us in this room. This environment is very rare. It's really precious. And our only request would be, and I speak on behalf of everyone, that let this be the beginning. There's so much rich content in the book. There be many events like this, many deeper conversations in different formats. And we would await that and look forward to that. And thank you very much once again. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so
for being
much,
so patient.
Dr. Anshu, and thank you all for coming. It's really a pleasure to have all of you here today evening, and we really enjoyed. Would like to thank all my young scholars, university students who have put together this show. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.